All right, crim 5, let's knock out chapter 4. Excuse me, this is another one that is probably longer than the chapter in the book, which is frustrating to me. I don't know why it is like that, but we are just basically going to talk about the difference between community relations, that is the police relationship with the community, and public relations, and that is the police and the way they choose to be seen by the public. So as you can imagine, those are two different things, and I'm going to kind of explain it. I hope that I can explain it throughout this presentation. So police-community relations, we have talked a lot about police-community relations. So hopefully we're going to be able to skip through some of this stuff and you'll be able to say, I already know that the police and the way they interact with the community is their police-community relations, okay? So now public relations, kind of a different deal. Public relations are much more like staged, rehearsed is more how I would say it, statements given by police to the community. Okay? So let's see. Okay. The purpose of the two and what the goal is of the two is kind of more what sets them apart. Police public relations are ultimately designed to create a favorable environment for agency operations to enhance their image, to target a citizen who passively accepts what the police department is doing, and there's no feedback or input. And for an example, a few years ago, the Fresno Police Department was having some issues where a deputy chief had been arrested and convicted for sales of, I think it was heroin and oxy and marijuana. Obviously, that can be a public relations nightmare. People are looking at the Fresno Police Department and probably the chief specifically and saying, what the heck is going on within that agency when your deputy chief, that's number 2 in charge of the Fresno Police Department, is arrested for selling controlled substances and ultimately ended up going to federal prison. So what could they do at that point to make the public in general, not necessarily communities, but the public in general, see them in a better light? Well, they could have news conferences. They could have things like that where they are able to control the information that is being released about them. And that's more of a public relations as opposed to community relations. So this is a slide. I think we're missing part of the slides here. It should say community relations involves citizens actively determining what and how police services will be provided. It provides feedback and input. So this is more of a community relations example. Again, talking about community relations. We've talked a lot about what community relations is. Community relations. We know what community relations is, so I'm kind of skipping a little bit of it because we've already talked a lot about what community relations is. Widely felt that specialized responsibilities could help improve communications between increasingly activist minority groups and the police. Again, we're still talking about police-community relations. We're going to keep on moving, There is a relationship between community relations and public relations. And so I don't want you to think that the two are not related at all, but they are two different things. Most importantly being, the police have a lot more control over public relations than they do with community relations. Does that make sense? Now, public relations, much more controlled environment. Police can release information by way of press release, news release, press conferences, things like that for public relations. Whereas community relations can be a little, for lack of a better description, messy. Police officers have to get down and dirty, get into the streets, get into the neighborhoods, and actually work with the communities to build those relationships. As opposed to public relations, they just issue a statement and it's over. They kind of hope for the best. They never actually take the time to find out whether that statement was, how that statement was taken, whether it was positive or negative. So that they are, again, two different things. It's important to recognize their differences and to practice both concepts for a contemporary police agency to be most effective. So if you think about a lot of you probably don't have regular contact with police. You're busy college students. Hopefully you're not getting into a lot of trouble. But you're busy college students. You're not getting into a lot of trouble. You don't have a lot of time to be out in your communities, unfortunately, probably right now, because you're probably working. You're definitely dealing with school. Most of us are, if you're not working, you're probably, hopefully, staying at home because we are trying to keep this whole COVID thing under control. So getting out in your communities and being real active right now is not really a possibility. So getting information about police right now, probably the only real way you're doing that is by way of social media or planned press releases from the police. Does that make sense? So right now, it's very likely that the police and public relations are dominating the way you and I right now are getting information about the police and are basing our opinions about police. We're not out there in the trenches right now seeing what the police are doing because most of us are really not out and about right now. I hope that makes sense. And again, both community relations and public relations are partly part of the police activity. The difference between the two should be understood and focus on these three characteristics. What is the purpose of the activity? The process involved in the activity and the extent of citizen involvement. Again, community relations, citizen involvement, high citizen involvement. Public relations, citizen involvement, low citizen involvement. Makes sense? Because public relations, the police are definitely controlling what information is coming out there. All police operations have or should have a stated purpose or goal. This purpose or goal generally embodies the values of the police agency. It's an administrative guide. Why has this activity been designed? So I want to show you here. I decided to pull up the Fresno Police Department's their homepage, and I looked really hard for just an actual mission statement, which I don't see. So this is their brand new police chief. He just came on this month. So again, I'm recording this in January of 2021. So this could be like, God only knows, 2025 by now when you're listening to this. So sorry. Yes, I actually did record this in 2021. But anyways, so since they don't have an actual mission statement posted, what I did read was in here. He kind of basically tells you what he believes in: communication, transparency, working hand in hand with the community to ensure citizens are heard and valued, sanctity of life. Police officers must have support of their community and their police chief. So he's basically listing all of the things that he thinks are important and his goals as a police chief. Okay, so he is talking about what he believes is important as the police chief. So you can bet that every agency is going to tell you what their goals are as an agency. When you go in for a job interview, you better be sure that you have looked at what the goals are of that agency too. Typically, it's going to be by way of a mission statement, and there might be a mission statement here. I just wasn't going to take hours to find it. So public relations. One common purpose of public relations activities is to develop and maintain a good environment in which to operate. Typically, they're trying to influence the attitudes of the public, politicians, and their staff. Why do we care what politicians think about us? Why would the Fresno Police Department care? And I always use the Fresno Police Department not to pick on them just because I live in the city of Fresno and they're the police agency that is we're in their service area, our campus is, my house is, all that kind of stuff. So I'm not trying to pick on them for any reason other than that. But why do we care what politicians think about the Fresno Police Department? Hey, guess what? Because they decide how much money the Fresno Police Department gets. Okay. So that might be important. Fresno County Sheriff's Department, same thing. Why do we care what the politicians think? Because the Fresno County Board of Supervisors decides how much money they get. So it is unfortunately important what the politicians think because they fund programs. Why is it important what the public thinks? Because if you don't have the backing of the public, it can be really difficult for your agency to be effective. And staff, if your staff thinks your agency's falling apart, they're going to jump ship and you're going to be looking to hire new staff. So these are three important groups to make sure they're on board and they feel like you're doing well. In order to achieve this purpose, it's important that all three of those know what you have done, are doing, and plan to do. Strongly held value in our culture. Anyways, yeah, it's all the same stuff that we just said, but in a much longer version. And either good, bad, or otherwise, it is always important for police to try and promote that positive image of themselves whenever possible. Done by stressing the helping and emergency attributes of the police role. I think sometimes people forget, sometimes people see those images of a police officer doing something horrific and they forget that was one officer doing something horrible, and they forget all the good ones that are running toward danger and that are doing amazing things on a daily basis. So those kind of community relations and public relations relationships are really important. And again, I kind of feel like a broken record here. Community depends on the police depend on the community. So, public relations, standardization is key in public relations, meaning public relations tend to be standardized. It is easy to control. It is something that is very well thought out. It is very well planned. It is something that is structured. It is fits in a box. Let's say that. Public relations is something, it's like math. Let's say that. I'm going to use that example. It's like math. There's an easy answer to it. It's something that is structured and standardized, and public relations is well thought out in a planned, methodical way. Okay? That's public relations, where a police agency makes a statement in a very thoughtful manner. in order to reach a specific goal of a positive outcome, and hoping that people will think good things about a particular agency. Okay? Agency oriented, okay, blah, 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 blah. Information flow. The public relations information flow, the flow comes from the top and goes out the bottom. It goes one way. The information flow is one way. It comes from the top and it goes out. Nobody cares about feedback. They're not asking for any information to come back. It is one-way flow. Okay, it comes from the top, it goes down to the bottom. Community relations. Very different. It is not standard. It does not fit in the box. It is not like a math equation. It is more like sociology. It is messier. It is not well organized. It is something that changes. It is flexible. So community relations versus public relations, very, very different. The flow can go both ways. It can come from the top. It can go from the bottom. It is, goes two ways. It can come from the chain of command, from the bottom of the chain of command to the top of the chain of command. Questions come in, questions go out. It is a very different animal. Citizen involvement is encouraged in community relations. It is not encouraged in public relations. Does this make sense? Public relations is an important part of any agency. However, it is not the same thing as community relations. It cannot build relations with the community. It can be a part of a grand scheme in order to keep the public informed, but it does not build relationships. It does not help cope with problems. It simply is a way to share information and possibly build an image. These are 5 functions that are essential to public relations: informing the public about crucial issues, developing community support, supplementing agency operations and programs, presenting an accurate picture of the agency, and enhancing the agency's image. These are some examples. Again, some programs with major community relations. So these are community relation, public relations programs examples, community relations program examples. Crime prevention. Is that another name for community relations? Definitely could be. Some programs are considered very successful, and their success is defined a variety of ways. A lot of you have probably heard about these police auxiliary volunteer programs. Definitely community relations. Community relations. Community relations.